The morning sky over Seoul turned black without warning. A massive alien ship appeared from nowhere, blocking out the sun like a giant metal cloud. Commander Park Ji-ho rushed to the Defense Ministry rooftop, his heart pounding as he stared up. Had the impossible sight above him. The ship was enormous, easily the size of a small city. Its surface looked like twisted metal and glass, with strange lights pulsing along its edges. Nothing in human history had prepared them for this moment. "Sir, this is incredible," Dr. Kim Sora said, her hands shaking as she held her tablet. The numbers on her screen made no sense. The energy coming from that ship broke every rule of science she had studied her entire life. "These they're impossible. This thing shouldn't be able to exist." Lieutenant Lee Min-ho worked frantically at his communication equipment. Nearby, his radio crackled with panicked voices from military bases around the world. Similar ships had appeared over every major capital city on Earth at exactly the same time. "Commander, they want to talk to us," Min-ho reported, his voice barely steady. The air above them shimmered, and suddenly a figure appeared like a ghost made of light. It was tall and thin, with skin that looked like living crystal. Its arms bent in too many places, and when it moved, it made a sound like wind chimes in a storm. "I am Ambassador Kethavar of the Hegemony Coalition," the creature said. Its voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Your species has been watched for many years. You grow too fast, you take too much. You will give us your weapons and machines, or we will destroy you all. You have 3 days to decide." Park Ji-ho felt his blood turn cold. 3 days to surrender everything humanity had built, or face complete destruction. He wanted to say something brave, something defiant, but the words stuck in his throat. Miles underground, General Choi Dae watched the same holographic message in his command bunker. The alien's words echoed through the concrete halls, and every person in the room held their breath. This was humanity's darkest moment. "Show them what happens to those who refuse," Kethavar continued. High above Earth, 3 space stations that had protected the planet for decades simply vanished. No explosion, no flash of light, no wreckage floating in space. 1 second they were there, and the next they were gone, as if they had never existed at all. Captain Yoon Hana, General Choi's assistant, felt sick to her stomach. Those stations had thousands of people working on them. Families, friends, people with children waiting for them to come home. All gone in an instant. "Sir," she whispered to the general, "what can we possibly tell them? How do we fight something like this?" The same question was being asked in secret meetings around the world. In London, Prime Minister Song Kyung sat in his emergency bunker, surrounded by advisors who looked as terrified as he felt. In Washington, President Chen Wei-lin stared at satellite images showing dozens of alien ships hovering over major cities. In Berlin, Chancellor Fischer met with his defense ministers, all of them knowing they faced an enemy beyond their worst nightmares. The aliens had given humanity 3 days, but it felt like 3 minutes. Every hour that passed brought them closer to a decision that would determine whether the human race would survive or join the countless other species that had surely faced this same impossible choice. Emergency sessions were held in every government building on Earth. Military leaders pulled out battle plans that suddenly seemed like children's drawings compared to the alien technology hovering above their heads. Scientists worked around the clock, trying to understand an enemy that seemed to operate outside the laws of physics itself. But in the end, the decision was surprisingly simple. When the 72nd hour arrived, every radio station, television, channel and internet connection on Earth carried the same message. Park Ji-ho stood at a podium in Seoul, representing not just Korea, but all of humanity. His voice was calm and clear as he looked directly into the camera. Behind him, the alien ship still blocked out the sun. Around the world, billions of people held their breath as they waited to hear their fate. To the Hegemony Coalition, Park. Ji-ho began, his words reaching every corner of the globe. "We have heard your demands, we have seen your power. We understand the choice you have given us." He paused, looking up at the massive ship above him, then back at the camera. "We decline." The words rang out like a bell across the world. In that moment, Humanity chose to stand together, even if it meant they would fall together. They had been given the choice between freedom and survival, and they chose freedom. The war for Earth's survival was about to begin. 3 long years had crawled by since that first black ship appeared over Seoul. Earth looked nothing like the blue marble it once was. Entire cities lay in ruins, their skyscrapers reduced to twisted metal and broken concrete. The sky was different too, filled with smoke and the constant glow of alien ships patrolling like hungry wolves. Captain Kim Tae floated in the command, chair of humanity's last defense satellite, staring out at a sight that still made his stomach turn. Hundreds of sleek alien warships drifted through space around Earth like a swarm of metallic sharks. They moved with perfect coordination, each one knowing exactly where the others were, never bumping into each other, never breaking formation. "It's like watching a deadly ballet," he muttered to himself, watching another group of enemy ships glide past his hiding spot behind a chunk of space debris. His satellite was supposed to have been destroyed months ago, but Kim Tae had learned to be very, very quiet. He'd shut down all unnecessary systems, running on minimal power, making his satellite look like just another piece of space junk floating among the wreckage of humanity's once proud space fleet. The last message from Mars still haunted him. Engineer. Jang Minji had been his friend at the academy. She was brilliant with machines, could fix anything with spare parts and determination. Her final transmission had come through weak and broken, full of static and fear. "Kim Tae, if you're listening to this, don't trust anything." Her voice had crackled through the speakers. "These aliens aren't just destroying our stuff. They're learning from it. They're studying how we build things, how we fight, how we think. Every time we use our weapons, they figure out how to stop them. Every time we try a new trick, they learn to counter it. Be careful what you show them because they're watching everything." Then the signal had died, and Mars had gone silent forever. Down on Earth's surface, the war looked nothing like the movies or history books. There were no massive tank battles or dramatic aerial dogfights. Instead, it was a dirty, desperate struggle, fought in the shadows and ruins of the old world. Admiral Song Hwan commanded what was left of Earth's military, from a bunker buried so deep underground that he hadn't seen sunlight in over 2 years. His command center looked like something from a spy thriller, dozens of screens showing alien positions, resistance cell locations, and the few remaining human strongholds scattered across the planet. "Look at this," he said to his staff, pointing at the main display. "Watch how they move. See the pattern? The alien forces moved like pieces on a chessboard. They would capture a city, set up defensive positions, then move on to the next target in perfect order. They followed rules, strategies, that had probably worked for them across dozens of conquered worlds. They fight like generals," Song Hwan continued. "Everything planned, everything organized. They expect us to line up our armies and meet them in open battle." But humans had stopped being predictable a long time ago. Sergeant Lee Ariam crouched in the rubble of what used to be downtown Busan, watching an alien patrol march past her hiding spot. Her squad was armed with weapons that would have made any military engineer cry. Pieces of broken alien armor welded to human rifle parts, communication devices built from smartphone components, and salvaged alien crystals. "Phoenix Base, this is Ghost Squad," she whispered into her radio. "The metal fish are following the same route again, 3rd time this week. The aliens were incredibly advanced, but they were also predictable. They had protocols, procedures, systems that worked perfectly when fighting other organized alien civilizations. But humans weren't organized anymore. They couldn't be. Every time they tried to build a proper army, the aliens would detect it and destroy it. So instead, they fought like ghosts. Lee Ariam's squad had learned to use the aliens' own equipment against them. They would wait for a patrol to pass, then quietly disable one of the rear guards. Within hours, they would have stripped the aliens' armor and weapons, reverse-engineered the useful parts, and turned them into tools for the resistance. "They think in straight lines," she radioed back to base after successfully ambushing another patrol. "Everything they do follows a pattern, but we think in spirals. We go around, under, through. We adapt." Miles away in a laboratory hidden beneath the ruins of Seoul National University, Dr. Park Yuna made a discovery that changed everything. She had been studying captured alien technology for months, trying to understand how their weapons and ships worked. What she found was both encouraging and terrifying. Each alien species is like a master craftsman, she explained to her small team of surviving scientists. The crystal beings are perfect at energy manipulation. The insect-like ones are incredible with biological technology. The floating gas creatures understand gravity in ways we never imagined. She paused, looking at the dissected alien devices spread across her work table. But here's the thing, they're specialists. Each species has spent thousands of years perfecting one skill, one way of thinking. They're incredibly good at what they do, but they can't do anything else. This was humanity's advantage. Humans weren't the best at anything. They weren't the strongest, fastest, or smartest species in the galaxy, but they were adaptable. When a human saw a problem, they would try dozens of different solutions until something worked. When one approach failed, they would immediately try another. The aliens expected enemies to fight with their own technology, using their own tactics. They had never encountered a species that would steal their weapons, reverse engineer their systems, and then use them in completely unexpected ways. The war was far from over. Earth's population had been cut in half. Entire cities were empty graveyards, and whole regions were uninhabitable wastelands. But something strange was happening to the survivors. They weren't just fighting to stay alive anymore. They were learning. They were changing. They were becoming something the galaxy had never seen before. A species that grew stronger with every defeat, more dangerous with every loss. The storm had broken over humanity 3 years ago. But instead of destroying them, it was forging them into something entirely new. Commander Choi Mina's ship looked like it had been built by someone having a fever dream. The hull was a patchwork of gleaming alien metal welded to human steel plating. Wires and tubes snaked across surfaces where they had no business being. The engine made sounds that would have terrified any engineer from the old world. By every law of physics and common sense, the ship should have fallen apart the moment it left the ground. Instead, it drifted silently through the asteroid belt, like a predator hunting its prey. "There," Mina whispered, pointing at her makeshift scanner display. "Hegemony cruiser, just like intelligence said it would be." The enemy ship was beautiful in its own terrifying way. Smooth curves of dark metal that seemed to absorb starlight, moving with the graceful precision that marked all alien technology. It was patrolling the asteroid field, probably looking for hidden human bases. 5 years ago, the sight of that cruiser would have meant certain death for any human ship. Now Mina smiled as she watched it through her viewport. "Remember the plan," she told her crew of 6 survivors. "We hit their communication dish first. The moment they can't call for help, we disappear back into the rocks. No heroics, no trying to be clever. We hurt them and we run." Her weapons officer, a former car mechanic named Park Dong-hyun, nodded as he aimed their improvised cannon. The weapon was built from alien energy crystals, powered by a modified truck battery. It shouldn't have worked, but somehow it did. The shot struck the cruiser's communication array perfectly, sending sparks and debris floating into space. Before the alien ship could even turn to face them, Mina's ship had already vanished behind a large asteroid. "Clean hit," Dong-hyun reported. "They're flying blind now." This was how humans fought now, like mosquitoes attacking an elephant. They would strike quickly, cause damage, and disappear before the enemy could respond. Each attack taught them something new about alien technology, and more importantly, each attack showed the aliens that humans were still fighting. News of these small victories spread through the resistance network faster than the aliens could track. Every successful raid was studied, analyzed, and copied by other human groups across the galaxy. General Kim Ji-won sat in his mobile command center, really just a heavily modified truck that moved to a new location every few days, reading the latest intelligence reports. What he saw made him lean back in his chair with the first genuine smile he'd worn in months. "Look at this," he said to his staff. "The aliens are starting to make mistakes." The reports painted a picture that would have seemed impossible just a year earlier. Hegemony fleets were arriving late to battles. Their formations were sloppy. Some ships were even attacking their own allies by accident. "It's their communication network," explained intelligence officer Yang Sumin, a former computer programmer who now spent her days decoding alien transmissions. Every time we hit one of their communication arrays, it creates gaps in their network. They're so used to being perfectly coordinated that when they can't talk to each other, they panic. But the most interesting intelligence was coming from intercepted alien communications. The hegemony wasn't just having military problems. They were having internal conflicts. It started with the Kithera, Yang continued, pointing to translated alien messages on her screen. Those are the crystal beings we see most often. According to these intercepts, some of them are questioning the war. They're asking why they're fighting us at all. This wasn't an accident. For the past 2 years, humans had been broadcasting their own messages using captured alien communication equipment. But instead of military threats or surrender demands, they were broadcasting something much more dangerous to the alien coalition: ideas. Dr. Lee Hyun-seo had come up with the plan while hiding in the basement of a destroyed library in Tokyo. She was a former philosophy professor who had lost everything in the first year of the war: her university, her home, her family. But she had kept her mind, and her mind had given humanity a new weapon. If they can broadcast threats to make us give up, she had explained to the resistance leaders, we can broadcast questions to make them think. The messages were simple. Why are you fighting? What do you gain from destroying us? Who decided this war was necessary? What would happen if you just stopped? These questions were translated into dozens of alien languages and broadcast on every frequency humans could access. At first, the aliens had simply blocked the transmissions, but you can't block an idea once it starts spreading. Captain Park Jun discovered just how effective their psychological warfare had become during a raid on a hegemony supply depot on one of Jupiter's moons. His squad had expected the usual fight, aliens defending their position with typical military precision. Instead, they found something that made them all stop and stare. A crystalline alien soldier stood in the middle of the depot, its weapon lying on the ground beside it. The creature's usually bright inner light seemed dim, almost sad. Park Jun approached carefully, holding a captured translation device. "Are you surrendering?" he asked. The alien's response chilled him to the bone, not because it was threatening, but because it sounded so human. "Why are we destroying you?" the creature asked, its voice echoing strangely through the translator. "Your species creates art, music, stories. You care for your young, you mourn your dead. What did we gain from conquering worlds like yours? What did we become?" More aliens were asking the same questions. The hegemony had been held together by absolute certainty, the belief that they were superior, that conquest was their right, that other species existed only to serve them. But humans had introduced something toxic to that certainty: doubt. Doubt spread through alien communication networks like a virus. Soldiers began questioning orders. Commanders started wondering if the war was worth the cost. Entire alien species began to fracture as individuals started thinking for themselves instead of following the collective will. The hegemony's greatest strength, their unity, was becoming their greatest weakness. They had spent thousands of years never having to justify their actions to themselves. Now they were paralyzed by questions they had never learned to answer. Humans were still dying. Earth was still scarred. The war was far from over. But for the first time since that first black ship had appeared over Seoul, humanity wasn't just surviving. They were winning. Not through superior weapons or better tactics, but by doing something the galaxy had never seen before. They had taught an entire interstellar empire to question itself. The tide was turning, and the aliens were drowning in their own doubts. 7 years had passed since humanity said no to the aliens, and the galaxy would never be the same again. Captain Lee Harim stood on the bridge of her flagship, looking out at a sight that would have been pure science fiction just a decade earlier. Her fleet stretched across space like a collection of beautiful monsters. Each ship was unique, part human engineering, part alien technology, all held together by the desperate creativity of a species that refused to die. Some vessels looked like traditional Earth warships with alien energy weapons grafted onto their hulls. Others resembled alien cruisers rebuilt with human armor and human hearts beating at their core. "Status report," Harim called out to her crew. 17 ships ready for hunting, Captain, replied her second-in-command, a former taxi driver from Seoul who had learned to pilot alien fighters by watching YouTube videos in bombed-out internet cafes. The word hunting would have sounded strange 7 years ago. Back then, humans were the prey, scurrying through ruins and hiding in caves while alien ships ruled the skies. Now the roles had completely reversed. Hundreds of light-years away, General Yoon Tae-jin sat in his intelligence headquarters, studying reports that painted an incredible picture of galactic chaos. The same alien coalition that had once seemed unstoppable was now tearing itself apart from the inside. "Sir, we're getting confirmed reports of civil war in the Kythera home system," his intelligence officer reported. "That's the third major alien species to start fighting amongst themselves this month." Yoon Tae-jin nodded grimly. The aliens' greatest strength had always been their perfect unity. Each species knew exactly what their role was in the coalition. The crystal beings handled energy weapons. The insect-like creatures managed biological warfare. The gas cloud entities controlled gravity manipulation. For thousands of years, this system had worked perfectly. But humans had broken that system by asking one simple question: why? Now, instead of working together, alien species were questioning everything. Why should the crystal beings take orders from the gas clouds? Why should the insect warriors die for planets they would never live on? Why should any of them follow orders from leaders they had never chosen? Colonel Kim Na-hee watched the latest surveillance footage from a failed alien attack on a human settlement. The assault had been a disaster, not because humans had better weapons, but because the alien forces couldn't coordinate properly. "Look at this," she said to her staff, rewinding the footage. "Half their ships are firing at targets the other half are trying to protect. Their commanders are giving contradictory orders. They're falling apart." She paused the video on an image of alien soldiers literally fighting each other instead of attacking the human base. "They don't understand us at all," Kim Na-hee continued. "They thought if they hit us hard enough, we would break like every other species they've conquered. Instead, we became something they never expected." The transformation of humanity was remarkable and terrifying. 7 years of war had changed the survivors into something new. They didn't just adapt to survive, they adapted to win. Every defeat taught them new lessons. Every loss made them more dangerous. Admiral Jang Gun-woo commanded the systematic hunt for remaining hegemony forces throughout known space. His ships moved like a pack of wolves, tracking down alien vessels that once seemed untouchable. "Target acquired," his navigator reported. "Single hegemony cruiser attempting to flee toward the outer rim." "Pursue and eliminate," Jang Gun-woo ordered calmly. The chase was brief. The alien ship was faster, but human ships were more unpredictable. They didn't follow standard pursuit patterns or use conventional tactics. Within an hour, another hegemony vessel joined the growing list of destroyed enemy ships. But something even stranger was happening across the galaxy. Entire alien worlds were simply empty. Lieutenant Commander Park Yerin discovered the first one during a reconnaissance mission in the 8th year of the war. Her sensors showed a perfectly intact alien city on the planet's surface. The buildings were undamaged, the technology was still functioning. Even the lights were still on. But there wasn't a single life sign anywhere. "Command, this is Recon 7, she radioed back to base. "You're not going to believe this. The planet is completely abandoned. No damage, no signs of battle, no bodies. They just left." Her landing team explored empty alien homes where meals still sat on tables, children's toys were scattered on floors, and personal belongings lay abandoned as if their owners had simply vanished mid-activity. "It's like they all decided to leave at exactly the same time," her team leader reported. "But why would an entire planet just abandon everything they owned?" The answer came from Dr. Song Min-seok, who had spent years studying alien psychology and behavior. His analysis of dozens of abandoned worlds revealed a pattern that chilled him to the bone. "They're not running from our weapons," he explained to the Scientific Council. "They're running from what we represent. For thousands of years, the hegemony species have defined themselves by their superiority over lesser races. They conquer, they rule, they control." He pulled up images of the abandoned worlds on his presentation screen. But humans did something impossible. We fought back and won. More than that, we've become better at their own game than they are. We've taken their technology and improved it. We've learned their tactics and countered them. We've adapted to their strategies faster than they can change them. The implications were staggering. The alien species weren't just losing a war, they were losing their entire sense of identity. If they weren't the superior species ruling the galaxy, then what were they? We've become what they always feared, Dr. Song continued. A species that doesn't just survive. We overcome. We don't just adapt to our environment, we adapt our environment to us. We don't just use tools, we become the tools. The psychological impact was devastating the alien coalition more effectively than any weapon. Entire species were abandoning their home worlds rather than face the possibility of becoming like humans, constantly changing, constantly growing, constantly challenging everything around them. The war was ending, but not through military conquest. Instead, humanity had achieved something unprecedented in galactic history. They had defeated an empire without destroying it. They had simply scared it into destroying itself. The hunters had become the hunted, and the hunted had become something the galaxy had never seen before, apex predators of the mind. 10 years had passed since that first alien ship blotted out the sun over Seoul, and explorer Captain Kim Do-hyun found himself floating through the most haunting sight in the galaxy. His ship drifted slowly through a massive graveyard of space, the former assembly point of the hegemony's Grand Fleet. This had once been the most terrifying place in known space. Thousands of alien warships had gathered here, their combined firepower capable of cracking planets and burning entire solar systems. Now there was nothing but empty space and drifting debris. "Captain, I'm not picking up any energy signatures," his scanner officer reported. "No life signs, no active technology. It's like they all just vanished." Kim Do-hyun stared out at the emptiness and felt a chill run down his spine. The silence was absolute, not just the lack of sound, but the absence of everything that had once made this place the beating heart of an interstellar empire. The last message from the hegemony had arrived 6 months ago. After years of increasingly desperate communications, threats, and finally pleas for negotiation, their final transmission had been broadcast from a single, damaged ship limping away from a dying world. One word, transmitted in perfect Korean. "Sorry, then nothing." The galaxy's most powerful empire had simply stopped existing. Survey Officer Lee Yuna worked methodically, documenting what remained of a civilization that had ruled the stars for millennia. Her job was to catalogue the abandoned worlds, the empty space stations, the ghost cities where billions of beings had once lived and worked and dreamed. "Preliminary report," she spoke into her recorder as her ship approached another lifeless world. "Former hegemony colony world designation H7739. Population before the war, approximately 4 billion. Current population, 0. The pattern was the same on every world they investigated. No signs of violence, no evidence of evacuation battles or desperate last stands. The aliens had simply left. Entire species had abandoned everything they had built over thousands of years and fled into the dark spaces between galaxies. Some hadn't even bothered to flee. Archaeological teams were finding evidence that several alien species had chosen collective extinction, rather than continue existing in a universe where humans had proven them wrong about everything they believed. Back on Earth, President Park Hyejin stood before a memorial wall containing the names of every human who had died in the war. The wall stretched for miles, each name representing someone who had fought and died for humanity's right to exist. "We never wanted this," she said to the crowd gathered for the 10th anniversary memorial. "We never wanted to become conquerors. We never wanted to inherit an empty galaxy." Behind her, the rebuilt city of Seoul gleamed with a mixture of human architecture and alien technology. Humans had taken the abandoned hegemony tech and improved it in ways its original creators had never imagined. Buildings that could reshape themselves based on need, transportation systems that thought faster than their passengers, medical technology that could regrow entire organs in hours. "But we did what we had to do to survive," the president continued. "And in surviving, we became something the galaxy had never seen before. Commander Choi Sun-ho led the exploration team through the ruins of the hegemony's former capital world. The planet had been the administrative center of the largest empire in galactic history, home to representatives from hundreds of species and the coordination point for fleets that patrolled 1,000 star systems. Now it was a museum of abandonment. In the Central Archive building, they found the final records of the hegemony leadership. Choi Sun-ho read through the translated documents with growing amazement and horror. They actually believed they were the good guys, he told his team. According to these records, they saw themselves as galactic peacekeepers. They thought they were protecting civilization by stopping dangerous species from expanding. The records showed that the hegemony had identified humanity as a threat long before making contact. They had watched Earth for decades, studying human behavior, human technology, human society. What they saw had terrified them, a species that fought wars with itself while simultaneously reaching for the stars. A civilization that could create beautiful art and terrible weapons in the same laboratory. Beings who cooperated and competed with equal passion, who could love and hate with the same intensity. They knew we were different, Choi Sun-ho realized. They knew we were dangerous in a way they couldn't understand or control. The most chilling discovery came from archaeological officer Yoon Ji-won in the deepest levels of the archive. She found records that went back thousands of years, detailed files on dozens of species that had been preemptively eliminated by the hegemony. "Look at this," she called to her team, her voice shaking as she read from an ancient data crystal. The Zenthari, eliminated for excessive technological curiosity. The Marek, destroyed for dangerous individualism. The Velon, exterminated for unpredictable social evolution. The list went on and on. Species after species that had shown signs of rapid advancement, adaptability, or independence had been quietly destroyed by the hegemony over the millennia, always with the same justification: galactic peace and stability. "We weren't their first target," Yoon Ji-won reported back to Earth. "We were just the first to survive their opening move." The revelation changed how humanity viewed their victory. This hadn't been a war between equals. It had been the last desperate act of an empire that had spent thousands of years murdering potential competitors before they could become threats. Humans had broken that cycle by doing something none of the other species had managed. They had survived the first strike and fought back. In the end, the galaxy learned a terrible lesson. The hegemony had made a fundamental mistake when they chose to attack humanity. They had assumed that humans would react like every other species they had encountered, with fear, submission, or desperate but ultimately futile resistance. Instead, they had attacked a species that had spent its entire evolutionary history at war with itself. Humans didn't just know how to fight. They knew how to learn from fighting. Every battle made them smarter. Every defeat made them more dangerous. Every victory taught them new ways to win. The hegemony had been strong, but strength alone wasn't enough against a species that grew stronger with every challenge. They had been united, but unity meant nothing against a species that could turn their own weapons against them. They had been superior, but superiority was useless against a species that specialized in becoming superior to whatever they faced. The silence that filled the galaxy now was the sound of an empire that had finally understood what they were truly fighting. Not just another species to be conquered, but a force of nature that couldn't be stopped, only unleashed. Humanity had won not by being the strongest or the smartest or the most advanced, but by being the most adaptable. In a universe full of specialists, humans were the ultimate generalists, capable of becoming whatever they needed to become to survive and thrive. Now, they walked among the ruins of the greatest empire in galactic history, inheritors of worlds they had never wanted, to claim masters of technologies they had never sought to possess. The war was over. Humanity had won. But victory felt a lot like being alone in a very large, very quiet house where everyone else had simply decided to leave rather than live with the new owners. The silence remained, and in that silence, the children of Earth began to write the next chapter of galactic history.